She arrived full of anticipation to meet her high school sweetheart, but before seeing him, she watched as he suddenly collapsed. Foaming at the mouth, Yishan rushed forward to check on him. While shouting for help, she held Fei Kei's hand tightly, watching helplessly as his breathing grew more labored. Paramedics quickly loaded him into an ambulance. Sean wanted to accompany him, but when asked for the man's name, she frowned and fell silent, leading the emergency personnel to refuse her request. After the doors closed, Fake, who was gagged, and an unknown liquid was injected into him through a syringe. The ambulance drove to a pier and stopped. Several people dragged out a suitcase, then boarded a boat and fled. Not long after, Hishan suddenly received a letter informing her that Fei Kei had passed away due to illness. Since his will mentioned Hishan, she was specially invited to a memorial service. As an old friend, Yishan knew Fei Kei must have been hiding something. Relying on her reporter's instincts, she went to the scene alone. However, upon arrival, she found only 5 other people there, none of whom knew each other. They included Chen Shufa, owner of Nanning Mining, Cheng Hao, a finance professional, Su Qian, who worked for a foreign medical company, Xian Er, a freelancer, and Lu Mo, the funeral arranger and driver. The group was then led to a basement where a coffin was placed. Lu Mo demanded that each of them share their story about Fei Ku, otherwise the will would not be read. But Chen Shufa suspected the coffin did not contain Fei Ku and stepped forward to open the lid. Lu and Mo warned that he was only following the will's instructions, and that without cooperation, they would not see Fei Ku one last time. Just as everyone was growing impatient and preparing to leave, Hishan overturned the coffin lid, revealing it was empty before anyone could react. Liu Mo had quietly escaped and locked the basement door. Cheng Hao lamented angrily that he had been fooled again. Hishan couldn't help but ask, "Have all of you been deceived by Fake?" After some discussion, they realized each person had indeed been tricked by him. When comparing contact information, they discovered Fei Ku had used 5 different accounts, and each of them had been in touch with a different version of him. Noticing a surveillance camera in the corner pointed at them, Yishan spoke calmly. She expressed her willingness to share her story about Fei Ku, hoping the person behind this would honor their promise and reveal the will's contents afterward. Seeing no immediate way out, everyone gradually sat down, ready to tell their stories. The first to speak was mining tycoon Chen Shufa. Fei's father-in-law Hishan had actually attended Fei's wedding, where photography was prohibited and phone cameras were sealed with stickers. While touching up her makeup in the restroom, Hishan faintly heard sobbing from a corner as she tried to investigate. A group of bridesmaids suddenly entered. Interrupting her, she had no choice but to return to the banquet hall. Yishan speculated that although those present didn't know each other, they might have crossed paths before. Su Xin believed Fei Qiu wanted them to find their connections and piece together the truth, since a liar's words couldn't be fully trusted. Chen Shufa angrily accused Fei Qiu of not only being a fraud, but also a murderer his daughter, he claimed had been killed by Fei Ku at the end of 2014. Chen Shufa's daughter returned from studying in the UK. In the spring of the following year, she met Fei Ku at a charity gala. A noisy boy suddenly became the center of attention, but Fei Ku's presence quickly calmed him down. Fei Ku's trick of suspending a soda can above the table demonstrated both intelligence and emotional intelligence, catching Chen Jiajia's attention. She initiated a conversation with Fei Qiu and found they both had study abroad backgrounds. They could claim to have graduated from Columbia Business School, and their shared topics quickly won Chung Jia over. Within less than half a year of knowing each other, they were discussing marriage. Once after Fei Qiu dropped Chen Jiajia off at home, she had a heated argument with her father. Chen Shufa had secretly investigated Fei Qiu's background and believed a nearly 30-year-old fund manager was not good enough for his daughter. Under pressure, Fei Qiu, waiting at a bus stop, received a call from Qin Geojia. He stood downstairs holding flowers, and when Qin Geojia looked out the window, she was deeply moved. The next day was the anniversary of Qin Geojia's mother's death. She threw a tantrum and refused to visit the grave. To appease her, Chen Shufa agreed to meet Fei Ku. Chen Jiajia had planned to book a Western restaurant, but Fei Ku suggested cooking a homemade meal instead. This way, he could showcase his cooking skills and leave a good impression. On the way to his place, Fei Ku sent a location pin, calling it another one of his residences. When Chen Shufa mentioned the address, Cheng Hao suddenly interrupted. "That's my home," when Chen Shufa entered the luxurious penthouse. His doubts began to fade, however. His businessman's caution led him to ask about the property details. Fei Ku was well prepared, and his answers left Chen Shufa with little to criticize. Fei Ku then demonstrated his tea-making skills, while the Porsche key and luxury watch on the table made Chen Shufa feel that Fei Ku was somewhat reliable. During the meal, Chen Shufa asked about Fei Ku's parents' professions. This question would ultimately lead to his downfall. Faker lowered his voice and said, his father worked in the Department of Land and Mineral Resources Management. He took his mother's surname while his father's surname was Li. Chen Shufa's heart stirred. As someone in the mining industry, Faker's father turned out to be his direct superior. These words delighted him. Later, he checked the records and confirmed that there was indeed a Deputy Director Lee in the Land and Mineral Resources Department. He quickly made up his mind to meet Fei Kei's parents. On the day set for the parents to meet, Fei Kei's father couldn't attend due to a meeting. His mother, however, was poised and elegant in her demeanor, and Chen Shufa was very satisfied, agreeing to the marriage. On the wedding day, Feiku's father only called to apologize for his absence. By then, Chen Shufa fully trusted Feiku. After the wedding, he even handed Feiku a bank card, with 10 million as seed money for the new family. But Fei, who wanted more, he purchased a new property in Chen Jiajia's name, paying 100,000 as down payment, and suggested renting a place after marriage. Unwilling to let his daughter suffer, Chen Shufa let the couple move into his family villa. They could gradually win the entire family's trust. Later, he took Chen Shufa to visit his fund company and recommended an investment project involving Canadian cancer screening equipment. He claimed the technology was exclusive, requiring only a tissue sample from a needle to predict cancer risk. Profits would come from the disposable needle heads, and the project could eventually be included in health checkups, with an expected IPO in 3 years. Chen Shufa was intrigued and asked about the investment amount. Fake said he only had about 5 to 6 million in shares available. An opportunity arose for Feikuo. Authorities began cracking down on private mines. With incomplete permits, Chen Shufa's mining license was leased, and no new licenses were being issued. He wanted to use Faker's connections to smooth things over, but was tactfully refused. However, Faker took matters into his own hands, claiming he had found a former director from the mining department who now chaired a group and could acquire Chen Shufa's mine. He then took Chen Shufa into a sealed room. In the room, the curtains were drawn shut and a voice came through a walkie-talkie. The person introduced himself as Yuji Feng and stated that while he could proceed with the acquisition, there were many competitors eager to close the deal quickly. Chen Shufa agreed to a 260 million deal over the walkie-talkie. However, Feiko later mentioned that the other party demanded a 10% kickback, with funds to be transferred through him as an intermediary. Each time Chen Shufa followed up on the progress, Fake, who would say over the phone, "Just wait a little longer," and continuously asked for money under the pretext of smoothing things over. In total, he took over 40 million. Then Fake, who suddenly disappeared.